The negotiation room aboard the neutral station Kepler-7 had fallen silent except for the hum of life support systems. Admiral Thexvar of the Crimson Hegemony leaned forward in his chair, his forearms spread wide in what his species considered a gesture of overwhelming authority. "Human," he growled, his translator converting his guttural language into crisp standard galactic. "You will surrender your outer colonies within 72 hours, or we will demonstrate why the Crimson Hegemony has conquered 47 star systems." Across the polished metal table, Captain Rebecca Torres of the Terran Defense Force sat perfectly still, her hands folded in front of her. She was small by most galactic standards, unremarkable in appearance, with a kind of calm expression that came from years of military service. "And how exactly will you demonstrate that, Admiral?" she asked quietly. Thexvar's mandibles clicked with amusement. Behind him, his war chiefs nodded approvingly. The human was obviously intimidated and trying to buy time. "We will begin by glassing your agricultural world of Haven 3, he declared. 5 million civilians will perish in the first hour. Then we will move to the mining colonies in the Kepler system. By the end of the week, 10 billion humans will be dead, and your pathetic species will beg for the mercy of slavery." Captain Torres blinked slowly, then leaned back in her chair. "Is that all?" The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Thexvar's confidence wavered slightly. "I beg your pardon? I asked if that's all you're planning to do," Torres repeated, her tone conversational. "Glass some planets, kill some civilians, standard orbital bombardment tactics. Is that really the extent of the Crimson Hegemony's military imagination?" The Admiral's war chiefs exchanged uncertain glances. This wasn't how conquered species typically responded to death threats. "Human, perhaps you did not understand," Thexvar said, his voice rising. "We are threatening to exterminate your people. This should inspire terror, not whatever this is." Torres nodded thoughtfully. "Oh, I understood perfectly. You're planning to commit genocide using standard siege warfare tactics that were considered primitive by galactic standards about 2,000 years ago." She paused. "I was just wondering if you had anything creative planned." "Creative? Well, for instance," Torres continued, pulling out a data pad, "when the Zephyrian Empire threatened us last year, they at least had the imagination to threaten temporal warfare. They were going to go back in time and prevent humanity from evolving. It wouldn't have worked, of course, but it showed some original thinking." Thexvar's confidence was rapidly dissolving. "What do you mean, it wouldn't have worked?" "Oh, we've been dealing with time travel assassination attempts for about 30 years now. We have protocols." She scrolled through her data pad casually. "The Void Collective was more interesting. They threatened to drag our entire solar system into a pocket dimension. Again, wouldn't have worked, but at least they were thinking outside conventional parameters. Pocket dimensions are impossible to weaponize," one of the war chiefs protested. "That's what we told the Void Collective right before we collapsed their dimensional anchor points and stranded their invasion fleet in null space," Torres replied matter-of-factly. "The Quantum Syndicate was probably the most creative, though. They tried to weaponize probability itself, make it statistically impossible for humans to win any conflict." The room had grown very quiet. Admiral Thexvar felt a cold sensation in his stomach that had nothing to do with the station's climate control. "And what happened to the Quantum Syndicate?" he asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. "We convinced them that probability is a two-way street," Torres said with a slight smile. "Turns out if you make it impossible for humans to lose, you make it inevitable that everyone else will." She closed the data pad and looked directly at Thexvar. "Admiral, in the past 5 years, humanity has been threatened with extinction by temporal manipulators, dimensional engineers, reality warpers, psychic high minds, and something that called itself a living mathematical equation. Your plan to throw rocks at planets from orbit is—" She paused, searching for the right word. Quaint. Thexvar's 4 arms were trembling now. What are you saying? I'm saying that if orbital bombardment is the most frightening thing the mighty Crimson Hegemony can threaten us with, then this negotiation is over. Torres stood up, straightening her uniform. Here are humanity's terms. You will withdraw from this sector within 48 hours. You will provide reparations to the civilian populations you've displaced. And you will never threaten a human world again. And if we refuse? Torres paused at the door, looking back with an expression that made every survival instinct in the room scream warnings. Admiral, you've spent this entire meeting telling me about the 47 star systems you conquered. That's very impressive. Her smile was perfectly pleasant and absolutely terrifying. Would you like to know how many star systems have tried to conquer humanity? The silence stretched until Thexvar finally found his voice. How many? All of them, Admiral. Every single aggressive species in this galaxy has eventually decided that humans needed to be eliminated. And do you know what they all had in common? Thexvar's translator barely managed to render his whispered response. What? They all had much better threats than will glacier planets, Torres said as the door closed behind her. 3 hours later, the Crimson Hegemony fleet began its withdrawal from human space.